to the Power of One. Today, I am going to be speaking with a dynamic elected official who has been doing amazing things, not only in the Northwest section of Philadelphia, but all throughout Philadelphia. One of the things that I remember that I loved is that he would bring concerts to Old God's Avenue, and I would sit on my father-in-law's lawn and just jam to the oldies. It was great. A block full of people, no chaos, no drama, no shootings. Dwight Evans has done amazing things for those in the Northwest section of Philadelphia. He is now our congressman, and I am so happy to be speaking with him today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for that introduction. And thank you for that warm greeting, especially because I've been around just a little while. And LaSalle is obviously a university that is very important to me.
I did hear that. And tell the viewers why LaSalle is important to you.
I graduated from LaSalle College. It seems like just yesterday, and I learned a lot from my experience from being around the campus, the importance of the campus. I was head of the Black Student Union when I was at LaSalle. So LaSalle has had a real value with me.
That's good. That is so good to know. Congressman, you've been an elected official for a while, like you said. Tell the viewers about your journey.
Well, in a sense, it really started with being at LaSalle. As a student of the Black Student Union, a gentleman by the name of Lafayette Barnes and I was the president and he was the vice president. And we learned a lot of experience by interacting with people and the importance of those people connected with the community. LaSalle, other parts of Philadelphia, other parts of this nation. It is that interaction that had a lot to do with my involvement, talking to students, teachers. I learned a lot. And through that experience is what helped me motivate to run for public office.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you start out as a state rep?
Yeah, the first particular really started out as a block captain.
Okay.
Where I became a state rep. And then as a block captain, I worked with the neighbors and I did various programs with young people, trying to get young people involved, interaction. And I always thought that was important because the value that I learned from LaSalle and the experience carried over when I decided to run for state representative. And I was fortunate enough to get elected the very first time.
Okay.
And then through getting elected, it is that kind of activity that helped shape my thinking.
Okay. And I know when I came on as the executive director for Northwest Victim Services, which was in 2014, and I was reaching out to the elected officials in the area, in the Northwest section of Philly. And I remember speaking to my mother and my father, who you know very well, Reverend Dr. John L. Payne and Patricia Payne. And I remember speaking to them and I'm all excited. Yes. And I'm talking to, at the time, was state rep Dwight Evans. My mom was like, oh, we've been knowing him for years. I'm like, well, you know him. And let me explain something to you, Congressman Dwight Evans. I do not idolize those who are on TV, like the so-called celebrities and all. I don't know them, but I know two dynamic people, which is my mother and my father, and they have given back to the community all of their lives. They are great people. So that is who I look up to. So I know if my mom and dad are associated with someone, they're good people. So I was just in awe to be in your presence and always be in your office with Vernon. He's like, Melany, we got to clean up. Melany, we got to clean up. I'm like, okay, give me the broom, give me the shovel. Where are we going in West Oak Lane? And we're going to do this. So now you're a congressman. Tell the viewers how your responsibilities changed from being a state rep to a congressman.
It's interesting. But first, I need to compliment about your mother and father and the significance of both their activity. Those were the kind of activism. They were the type of people who were very much involved at the ground level. They basically helped me a lot when I got elected. I always able to call about them. So I want to say this because they must be treasured for all that they have done and their involvement. So I say that to you is say hello to them. Don't take it lightly. They are two individuals who have done an awful lot. I know that, and I thank them for all that they have done. What led me to Washington? I was in Washington, Harrisburg, for about 36 years. I was in the state legislature, and I was the chairman of the Appropriation Committee. The first time ever an African American had ever been elected in that particular position. And it was that early groundwork that had a lot to do with shaping my thinking of public policy at a state level. The state is extremely important because we must understand that it started here in Pennsylvania in terms of the nation. One of the original states, Pennsylvania, has a very important role. And then you connect that to the country. So that role that I played at the state level had a lot of effect upon my thinking when I was state legislator. And during that time that I wound up running for Congress, 2 years, 36 years after I ran for Congress in 2016. Mm-hmm. And in 2016, when I got elected, 2016 basically really enhanced my role on a national level. And then being elected there, I got on the Ways and Means Committee, which is one of the most significant committees in the United States Congress. I'm happy to say that Philadelphia is fortunate. We have two members who are on the Ways and Means Committee. And I'm proud to say that I'm one of those members who are on the Ways and Means Committee. The other gentleman name is Brendan Boyle, right here from the city of Philadelphia. And I work closely with him, along with Mary Gay Scanlon, who is the other congressperson from Philadelphia. So the three of us represent the city of Philadelphia. And we're in a rather challenging time, challenges of how to keep people engaged in the political process with the question about violence that we face today, with the question about climate control, those issues, and how to keep young people very much engaged in this process. As I said to you, that's exactly how I started out. So the challenge today is to find ways to keep young people engaged in this process. And doing what you're doing here with LaSalle and this type of event is extremely significant, and having these type of conversations with the issues that we face. We face some challenging times. And I don't have to tell you that. I mean, you see it in our neighborhood with the question about violence and things that we need to do. So I share with you, it was that growing experience at LaSalle that had a lot to do with my growth and development.
Now, it's interesting you speak about young people. And yes, Philly is faced with some horrible times right now. Not all of Philly and not all young people are bad. It's not what we're saying. Congressman, I don't think people, young or old, or some middle age, really understand the importance of our elected officials and how we tap into them, when we tap into them, and the importance on how they can help us. Now, I'm going to speak about an issue. There's a gentleman by the name of Stanley Key. Unfortunately, his mother was a victim of a hit and run. Now, we just saw a hit and run this morning on the news when they were drag racing and someone lost their life. Stanley Key's mother was getting off the bus around the Crescentville Valley area, getting off the bus coming from work, and someone hit this woman and she died. So here it is now, Stanley Key, his life is just changed forever. Everything has changed for this young man. And his request is, Melany, there's no sidewalks there. How can you help me get this in there? There, it's a SEPTA station, there's no lighting. And he said we need speed bumps there. So I did reach out to a couple of elected officials in that area. It to me, the process is overwhelming for a gentleman who just lost his mother. So for the speed bumps, you have to get this petition and get all of these signatures. This young man is frustrated. He's upset. He's like, Melany, no one really cares. I had been there with him from day one. Speak to that piece. Like, how can elected officials be able to help the citizens when something like this happens?
You know, you raise a very good point. And obviously, I'm very sorry what occurred with the young man. And we are in a very difficult time. And I'll be the first to say to you, sometimes there's things that I do not understand about the challenges we face. But I know the deal with the challenges will only happen when there's constant participation. Through participation, when I described the story about myself, and I didn't really say when I first got involved as a young man, I got involved because some neighbors were feeling rather hostile about what was happening in the neighborhood. And I remember the neighbors, it was the 2100 block of Homer Street, which is where my mother lives, and she is 90 years old. And I remember with those neighbors, they wanted to go out and buy guns. I did not think buying guns was an answer to solving the problem. I thought only through the neighbors getting involved, house by house, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, could we address these challenges. Now, obviously, the challenges we face are great. I will not tell you they're not. And there's no simplistic answer to them. So when you said it's about taking control of your environment, if you want to change things, you must change the neighborhood to change the behavior. You must change the neighborhood to change the behavior. And that requires house by house, block by block, school by school, church by church, every single neighborhood. It must be, there's no instant answers to it. We must, I had the pleasure of serving with someone who had the late John Lewis. The late John Lewis, I learned an awful lot. He was from Georgia, and he was with Dr. Martin Luther King. And he was 23 years old when he carried the mantle, 23. He died in his 80s. He was in the house. But he took the initiative. And you think about the work that Dr. King led. And John Lewis was a young kid. And I tell you that name especially and encourage your audience to research him and understand the presence that John Lewis had upon not just people like me, but this nation. And with he had a tenacity to stick with things. He used to say, I want to go out here and do something good. And I think it's important that we must maintain that kind of attitude because this city and this state and this society is nothing unless the people who live there take the responsibility. That's why I said all aspects, church, school,
Mm-hmm.
I describe as I described my background and how I got involved. I got involved by being active. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
was there frustrations? Yes. Was there
Mm-hmm.
disappointments? There was disappointments and frustrations. There were
Mm-hmm.
some things I have to admit to you I did not understand
Mm-hmm.
then, and I don't necessarily understand now. But I say to you, I know only through tenacity, not giving up, not quitting, can you make a difference. That people must engage with each other in
Mm-hmm.
order to address the challenges that we face. And until we begin to engage with each other, can we only address the challenges that we have. As I said, some of the problems that we have today, when we talk about the pandemic, that was the epidemic. We talk about violence. All those things are interconnected. Talk about climate control. All those things are interconnected. But you can only address them unless we ourselves take
Mm-hmm.
the initiative and
Mm-hmm.
work together to address these problems.
You know what? You're so right, and you just made a light bulb go off because I'm going to be honest. I was upset with some elected officials with going back to Stanley Key. And I'm like, come on. But you're right. And I commend you for what you did. You're still in the Northwest section of Philly. Your mom lives in the Northwest section of Philly. She lives next door to my uncle, actually. So I commend you. And you're right. We have to fight for what we believe in. We can't rely on someone else to fight for us if we're passionate about it. Oh my, you're so right. So I am going to call him today and I'm going to tell him, listen, don't wait for anybody else. You have to take this fight on for yourself. You have to be your mother's biggest advocate. And you have to fight. You have to have all your neighbors to rally around you. And now you have to make a difference for what you believe in. You're right. We can't
And, and
rely
I
on someone
say
else.
that because may it be a person in the state or the federal government, nobody's going to solve that problem but you.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's going to solve that but you with the energy level that you must have. No, it's
Right.
no instant answer. You can't do it through Twitter. You
That's
can't
right.
do it through Facebook. You can't do it through, Facebook and Twitter was not around when I was an organizer
Mhm.
in a neighborhood. They didn't know anything about Twitter. They didn't know
Right.
anything about Facebook. I only knew that if I wanted to address the issue, the only way. So when Vernon said what he said about Gonzaga, he was telling you that's what I used to say to him.
Mm-hmm.
I used to say that to them all. You
Mm-hmm.
were relentless. You must be relentless. You
Yes.
must be
That's what your
relentless.
staff was. Your
Right?
staff
That's
was
what
relentless. Yeah. They would
that was
contact me all the time. Melanie, we got career days. Come on,
that's
we're gonna hit all
exactly
these
it.
schools in the Northwest section of it. Not a problem. And I'm going. And guess what I did? I brought my two sons. My two sons, they're 29 and 27 now. But I invested in my babies. I loved on my babies. It wasn't about a whole lot of money. It was about time and love that my husband and I put into our children, but I would take them with me. And at the time, my youngest son, he was in high school and he was at Saul. So he was doing all the things and he was doing amazing work. But I took my sons with me because I wanted those other children to see all kids are not bad
Well,
and all kids are not
it's
doing bad
interesting you
things.
say that. Saul is one of my favorite schools. Uh,
Okay.
it, it was built in 1956. It is agriculture. It is what we are like more than food and the
Mm-hmm.
importance of food and what food does. I'm a strong advocate for the element of food, the quality of food, and what food, how people value the aspect of agriculture. It is something that affects the entire world,
Yes.
right? Even vegans like food. It's just a different kind of food. So I
That's
share with you that we must understand these assets that we have available to us and how will we use these assets These
Mhm.
assets, LaSalle, Saul, all these are assets in our community. And
Yes.
all of them require us to understand, as you said earlier, first is understanding the assets available to us and then trying to take advantage of those assets and build upon them. So I share with you with what the leadership that you're doing through this podcast is something that should be done every single day. And we must be relentless. And the violence I will share with you is not unique to Philadelphia, not
Mhm.
unique to Pennsylvania, not unique to the nation. And it is unfortunately, my mom, as I always will bring her name up, I used to go to a church called Providence Baptist Church on Haines Street, right
Okay.
across the street from the elementary school that I went to. I went to Robert Fulton Elementary School.
Okay.
And it was that combination of the church and the
Mm-hmm.
school, the
Mm-hmm.
combination of the teachers. I
Mm-hmm.
remember my fifth grade teacher, Miss Burrows. She was
Okay.
my fifth grade teacher. So she was right across from the church that I went to. So a combination of that school, that
Mm-hmm.
church, the values. So the things we're doing like now, we have to dig deeper and
Yeah,
not give up so quickly. We
that's true.
cannot give up.
Now, Congressman, let's speak about something that's real. Children are different from when I grew up. You knew my dad. My dad ain't had no problem with putting me back in line, which I love him for it. I have a healthy respect and a healthy fear for my dad. And I'm a daddy's girl. To this day, I'm a daddy's girl. But times are different. Now you have poverty and you have some children that are brought up in households where violence is condoned. Tell me, let's talk about the poverty piece first. If someone wants to come to your office and they're having problems saying paying their utility bills or they're behind in their rent, does your office assist with that or provide resources?
We do a combination of things. I am here still on Ogontz Avenue, and I have an office in Point Breeze. And through those two offices, the 750,000 people that I represent, we are very geared towards constant outreach. I'm a strong believer. I form alliances with other state elected officials and city elected officials. And we take that time, and we must take the time to constantly figure out strategy. There are there are avenues available, and a lot of times people may not be aware of those avenues available. I look at myself as a resource that is available to them. So the key thing I try to do is I try to tell you about opportunities that are available. The number one issue is opportunities. The greatest issue and challenge that we face is our economic opportunities. As a city, as a state, and as a country, it is the economic opportunity. There are a number of things that we have done that I think would be very, when I say we, talking about in Washington. I think the president of the United States and the vice president of the United States, who are resources and available, and we work. I'm with the Congressional Black Caucus. There are 58 members a part of the Congressional Black Caucus. These people are available, got insight. The question is, like the question you asked me, is really trying to understand how they exactly use the resources and the contacts that are available to you, and not being fearful of taking time and meeting with people in office. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
strong advocate for that. I've always been, my entire career has
Mm-hmm.
been focusing on people within my office doing outreach. Our
Mm-hmm.
number one issue is outreach. And so people can understand what is available to them and to take advantage to what is available to them. Only through taking advantage of those opportunities can you be in a position to ensure that you have the skills that you need, which is something that we shouldn't take lightly. That's why
Right.
I mentioned to you about schools. That's why I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned to you about churches.
Mm-hmm.
Schools, churches have are resources. They are
Right.
resources. People in those schools, people that, as you know, with your father is activity, your mother, as you know,
Mm-hmm.
are active people.
Yes.
And it's through that activism that links out and connects. Because look, I don't profess to be a genius.
Mm-hmm.
What I do is try to make sure within my office operations that they are available to people, and we let people know the kinds of things that we should be. Like when you was describing, you was really going back when you was talking about Ogan's Avenue. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
started the Ogan's Avenue Corporation, and that was the basis of a lot. That was a focus of mine. That was building a building block. That was really an attempt to change the avenue, to change the environment,
Mm-hmm.
to give the people a new sense of the existence of myself as a state legislator and now as a congressperson. And then what I do is I link those relationships. You know, uh, the president of the United States has been on Ogan's Avenue. The vice president has been on
Mm-hmm.
Ogan's Avenue.
You're right.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and understand that I'm very conscious of that. I'm very not just say that, but they're here and they're resources and they're available. So I don't take that lightly. And I would encourage people who are listening to is not to take anything uh, uh, that it happens automatic. I'll admit to you, you do have to work at it, and it does take effort in order to make it happen.
Yes. And that's true. For all of you listening, Congressman Dwight Evans has been around for a very long time. And this is my mother, along with the Congressman Dwight Evans, when you were probably a state rep at that time, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. Well, I do want to thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you come back on the show because we have a whole lot to talk about, because we have to educate our people, and we have to let those young African American men and women know it's possible. You don't have to live in some big, beautiful home in some suburbs. You can be right from the West Oak Lane Park, North Philly, West Philly, does not matter. And you can make a difference in the world. Thank you so much, Congressman.
And I thank you sincerely for taking the leadership and by what you're doing. And I thank your mother, I thank your father, and I thank your two sons and everybody who is engaged in this process. I'm an internal optimist. I strongly believe we can make a difference when we work together.
And I agree. Thank you so much for joining me today. The power of one lies with you, lies with me, and together we're going to make a difference. But I do want to say something to those viewers. Any of you who do not trust elected officials, you have to link up with the good elected officials. I'm not saying anybody's bad, but I believe you have to cultivate relationships. And Congressman Dwight Evans is a very good man who is doing great things.